Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're talking about a huge $75 billion problem for India, and it's all happening out on the high seas. You can think of it as a massive leak in the country's economy, and we're going to dive into the really ambitious plan to plug it for good.
Yeah, that's right. $75 billion. That's the freight bill India pays out to foreign shipping companies, not over a decade, but every single year. It's just a staggering amount of cash flowing right out of the country. So you have to ask, right? How did a major trading nation like India end up so dependent on other countries' ships? And maybe even more importantly, what's the actual game plan to turn this massive economic tide around? Okay, so first things first. To really get a handle on this solution, we've got to understand why this $75 billion figure is so much more than just, a number on a spreadsheet. Think of it like this. It's a huge economic leak. See, every single dollar that's spent on a foreign ship isn't just a dollar gone. It's a lost chance to build up an entire industry right there at home. We're talking about everything from financing and designing ships to actually building and repairing them. And what does that mean in the end? Well, it means fewer jobs for Indians and weaker, less reliable supply chains for the whole country. Right. So how did we get here? Well, a problem this big doesn't just pop up overnight. Nope. This leak has been slowly growing for decades. It was basically a perfect storm of different factors, all hitting at once. First, India's trade volume just exploded, right? But its own shipping fleet, it just couldn't keep pace. Then you had a few global giants start to dominate the whole industry. This forced India to rely on foreign ports, these massive hubs like Singapore or Colombo, just to move its own stuff from one boat to another. So you add all that to an aging Indian fleet, a serious lack of low-cost financing, and a pretty weak domestic shipbuilding industry, and, well, you can see how you end up with the massive leak we're talking about today. And if you look at the timeline, you can actually see how different policy decisions over the last 70-plus years paved the way for this. Right after independence, you had this big push for a public sector national carrier. But then came the 90s and economic liberalization. That opened the door for private companies. And honestly, they often found it way cheaper and easier to just buy fancy modern ships from other countries. The government's focus then shifted to upgrading the ports, which was great. But the actual shipbuilding part? That got left in the dust. It's only really now, in the 2020s, that we're seeing a major strategic push to completely reverse that trend. Okay, so we've diagnosed the problem. Now, let's get into the good stuff, the blueprint to fix it. What's the actual plan to turn things around? The whole strategy is really built on two incredibly ambitious long-term goals. The first one is the Maritime India Vision for 2030. The target there, become a top 10 shipbuilding nation. But that's just the warm-up act. The long-term ambition, the Maritime Emirates Call for 2047, is even bigger. We're talking about cracking the top 5 globally and achieving what they're calling meaningful self-sufficiency in shipping. So you might be wondering, how on earth do you even get there? Well, the plan is to attack this problem from a bunch of different angles all at once. Step 1, make the money side work. That means new financing options, tax breaks, the whole shebang. Step 2, get the private sector fired up. They're actively encouraging these huge conglomerates to jump into shipbuilding. Then, you've got to boost R&D to build up that local design talent, and at the same time, you create guaranteed business for Indian carriers through cargo reservation. But here's the really crucial part. This whole thing is forward-looking. The big push is on building those next-gen, eco-friendly green vessels. But at the end of the day, all this strategy, all these plans, they boil down to one thing. You have to actually build the ships. So let's talk about that. What does it really take to build the new fleet that's needed to plug this massive leak? And when you look at the numbers, the scale of this challenge is, well, it's staggering. I mean, just look at this. Right now, India's annual output is tiny, just 0.072 million gross tons. The goal for 2030 is to get that up to 0.33 million. That's a huge jump. But the 2047 goal? 11.3 million. That's not just a jump, it's a completely different stratosphere. We're talking about a more than 150-fold increase in capacity. It's a truly monumental industrial mountain to climb. So who are the players tasked with climbing this mountain? Well, it's going to take an all-hands-on-deck effort. You've got the public sector workhorses, the legacy shipyards like Cochin and Mazagon Dock. But they can't do it alone. You're also seeing huge private players like L&T, and now a new wave of massive investment from groups like Adani. To hit these kinds of targets, you're going to need both public and private money mobilized on a scale we've just never seen before in this sector. Which brings us to the final and, let's be honest, the most important question. The plan is ambitious, for sure. The numbers are absolutely huge, but can this vision actually become a reality? When you read the official language of the 2047 plan, there is absolutely no doubt about the level of ambition here. This is not just about saving some money on shipping fees. No way. This is a strategic play for real industrial power. The goal is a future where the vast majority of India's trade is carried on ships that are proudly built and owned by India. So, what's the bottom line here? Look, plugging a $75 billion leak is a huge deal. That's the immediate goal. But the real prize, the long-term vision, is so much bigger than that. And it leaves us with the one question that will really define the next couple of decades for India's entire economy. Is this just about saving money? Or is this about building the foundation of a true global maritime superpower? The blueprint is on the table, but the voyage to get there, well, that's going to be a long one.